Hi, my name is Michelle Wakeford. I'm from the Brotherhood of St Lawrence, and I'm here to talk to you about creating pathways from school to work for young people with intellectual disabilities through the Ticket to Work approach. So we set up the Ticket to Work approach mainly because the recognition that engaging in work has a range of benefits for young people with disabilities, particularly intellectual disabilities, including opportunities to have those valued roles. However, young people with disabilities continue to transition from school to non-vocational pathways in high numbers. At the time, there was some research that was being done that showed that transition from school to work had been reducing over the last 10, 15 years. So rather than getting better at school to work transition in Australia, we were getting worse. We started to do some scoping research, and we found that other countries we're doing a lot more than what we were in Australia around improving employment outcomes for young people with intellectual disabilities. So we set up the Ticket to Work approach. And our aim is to improve employment opportunities and outcomes for young people with a disability. The way we do that is through three main areas. So practice. So we promote and support communities and organisations to implement evidence-based practice and improve outcomes for young people with a disability. We identify good practice research and conduct research and convert that research into practical guidance and do evaluations of the findings. And also we are really keen to influence policy at the local, state and national levels to make sure that we are doing evidence-based practice and that young people with disabilities are getting opportunities to take on employment pathways. The way we do that is through our values. So the idea of one for the many. So the work that we do with one community is providing through advocacy and practice guides and a range of things can support many. All our work is in partnership with a range of our partners and stakeholders and members. So we work with communities to improve school to work transition, supporting them to implement that evidence-based practice. We're innovative and ambitious, and as I said, very much based on what the evidence says and how we can implement that in Australia. To date, we've in the communities that we've worked with, we've supported over 1,600 young people into employment, the majority of them with intellectual disabilities. So we had in our work, we developed a theory of change, so that the idea that connecting a student with disabilities to the world of work before they leave school through a coordinated approach greatly improves the chances of securing ongoing open employment. This creates greater personal, economic and social outcomes. Our work is driven by the belief that the most significant barrier to employment for young people with intellectual disability is not ability but opportunity. Young people with disabilities often face limiting stereotypes, a culture of low expectation, and what that does is result in a lack of supported opportunities for genuine supported employment. We believe to create meaningful change, we need the various sectors, education, training, employment and the disability sector working collaboratively in a community to create better outcomes. So when we looked at what the evidence was saying, we know that there's 20 key predictors of post-school employment. There's been some major longitudinal studies that have been completed and they were able to identify a range of different research. So in regards to fidelity, there's around the 20 evidence-based predictors. ANU in Australia also looked at the evidence and kind of condensed that into 6 best practices for school to work transition, and which often are called the golden rules of employment transition. So when we work in communities, we do a number of things. So the model develops combining various success factors from that research and putting it into the on the ground in the community. So what we do is that the approach prepares young people for the world of work, providing them with an open employment pathway. And that's through a combination of while still at school, of vocational career development and early contact with the work environment. Community partnerships are developed, and we leverage the power of those different sectors working together to provide individual supports, blending and existing resources, and making sure that coordination and scaffolding all the relevant supports for a young person with significant disabilities. The way we do that in community is that we have what we call an intermediary. So someone or an organisation that supports the development of that local community partnership, including schools, employment services, training organisations and employers. The approach brings those people together to work strategic and collaborative, makes sure that young people with a disability gain early experiences that positively influence their view of themselves as workers, as well as the view of their parents and families and supporters, prepares young people with disabilities for the workplace and gives them a typical pathways into employment as other young adults, and also meeting the needs of employers. There are three key areas that we work on in communities: building the capacity of the key actors that are essential in that school to work transition, making sure that there's collaboration between the various sectors, and making sure that young people have supported opportunities in their community to create a pathway to employment. So we've just been working with the Centre for Social Impact with Swinburne University, and they've been looking at our data and have kind of explored the outcomes from the Ticket to Work participants over a period of time. So what we have been doing is attempting to track the young people, particularly looking at their post-school outcomes. Most of the work that we do in Ticket to Work is in school, with the idea of creating that better outcome post-school. We'll also be completing outcomes looking at a comparison, so comparing the outcomes of the participants that had these opportunities while still at school compared to other data sets, so the national data sets, and also looking at doing a comparison and cost benefit of those benefits. So as you see, we're mainly working with young people with intellectual disabilities and autism. And the majority of the young people we work with have intellectual disabilities. When we look at the open employment pathways, so looking at the number of young people that gained employment, as you can see, from the graph, it shows that the majority of young people when looking at autism, so over 80% gained employment. For young people with intellectual disabilities, that was at 52%, and the other disabilities at just over 70%. So those young people with intellectual disabilities are less likely to get open employment. But when you compare that data with other young people with intellectual disabilities that haven't had those opportunities, then it's much increased. So we're really keen to explore what are those elements that can create those better outcomes for young people with intellectual disabilities. When we compare the data, looking at the in-school employment outcomes as well as the post-school employment outcomes over the years, and then compared that to NDIS data looking at open employment outcomes. So as you can see, the open employment outcomes for NDIS participants were around between the 10 and 20%, or just under 20%. Whereas for young people with that had those opportunities in school through that coordinated approach, their employment outcomes were much higher, both in school and out of school. So we've been doing a whole range of different things from our the learnings from the Ticket to Work and the work with our communities and our partners. So we have now developed a whole range of resources that are on our website. So we have some e-learning, and these are some of our posters that are available. So we're really keen to take what we've learned and that research into practice, and then support others to create better outcomes in their communities or their organisations, using the approach that we've been doing. So how do we take that research into practice guides and information, and supporting others to do work that creates better outcomes for young people with intellectual disabilities. So we believed to improve employment outcomes, we need to build expectations and support so young people with intellectual disabilities gain those early experiences and positively influence their views of themselves as valued workers. We want to make sure that students with intellectual disabilities are prepared while still at school, so not waiting till post-school, having those opportunities to do things like work experience, after-school jobs, career development while still in school, and building those expectations to create those pathways into open employment. We really believe we need student-focused networks, that it shouldn't be a program or a particular sector's responsibility to create better outcomes. We know from all the evidence that we need a coordinated approach, and various sectors coming in to work strategically and collaboratively to create pathways in that young person's community. And we need to have policy programs and practices that incorporate evidence-based practice, like the Ticket to Work approach. So that's a very brief outcome, elements of the Ticket to Work approach, and the research that the Centre for Social Impact has completed. We're more than happy to have those kind of conversations with organisations or others that are just keen to learn and to do more. We have a newsletter on our website, and we also are developing up a whole range of webinars and other practice guides to make sure that everyone knows what works and what doesn't, and that they can implement it into their services and communities. So our website is tickettowork.org.au. So I'd like to thank you for listening, and please get in touch if you've got any questions. Thank you.